Today we're going to show you how to remove a tire from the wheel, replace an inner tube and or the tire in the event that you have a flat tire or if you wear something out and you need to change it. The first thing you need to do is let all the air out of the tire. Now, obviously, if you have a puncture, you don't have to do that because it's hopefully already out. So let the air out. The reason you need all the air out is that you need the most amount of room to move this tire around. And if there's any air in there, it's not going to move around easily. So just give it a little squeeze, make sure it's all out. Now this has a Presta valve, so I just need to push on it. If you have a Schrader valve, you need like a pencil or a screwdriver and you just push the valve in. Next, you need a tire tool, which looks like this. And tire tools are usually made out of plastic. The reason they're plastic is that they are made out of a material softer than your tire, softer than the rim, so that you don't damage either one when you take it off. For very stubborn tires, you will sometimes need to use a metal tire tool, but we really frown on it because it damages the rim and it does damage the tire. Plastic tire tools do break, so if you do break one, don't get real upset, just go out and buy another one. To take the tire off, you're going to pull it away from the rim, like that. And then you're going to get this part of the tire tool, see how it's kind of like pointed up, and you hook it under the tire, like that. And then as you pull it down, you can see how it's lifting the tire off the wheel. Now, tire tools have hooks in them, so that when you pull it down, if you did this properly, let's say we do it over here. When you pull this down, you can actually hook it onto that spoke. I don't like doing that because the hooks sometimes will dislodge if you jiggle the tool a little bit, and then the tool comes around like this and flips and it goes flying through the shop. Having launched a couple of these through the shop over my years, I don't advise you doing that. So hook the tool. Before you pull it down, get your second tool, go 5 or 6 inches over, do the same thing. Hook it under the tire. Now you want to push this tool down, do the same thing there. See how the tire just popped off the rim in that little section across here? If the tire is loose fitting, you can now get this tool and you're going to slide it and the tire will come off. All right, this one is not doing that. The tire is still too tight. So take the tool out, go over a couple more inches, same thing. You're going to hook it under the tire, you hook it underneath, and then you're going to pull down. All right, see another section just popped off. At that point, it should be loose enough so that you can actually slide the tool around and it pops the tire off. At this point, you want to reach inside, grab your inner tube, pull it out. Now, if you had a puncture, someplace in that tube, there's a hole. And what you need to figure out is where that hole is and how it got there. Because if you don't figure out how it got there, when you put the next inner tube in, whatever punctured the first one could puncture the next one. Now at this point, some people like to leave the tire on and just take it like half off the wheel like this. I don't like to do it that way. My reason is that it's hard to examine the inside of the rim, the tire bead. It's just difficult to assess the situation. So after you get the tube out, you're going to get your tire tool again with the point going up, and you're going to weave it, push it into the tire, and then you're going to kind of slide it around because you want this part of the tool to hook the opposite side of the tire. So you're going to go in like that, and then with your thumb you can move the tire until you see the tool pop through. See it right there? Once that pulls through like that, you're going to do the same thing. You push it down, and if you put that on the ground and just grab the tire and push down, see how it comes right off the rim? So at that point, your tire, tube, and wheel are all separated. So now the issue becomes, what made your flat tire? To figure that out, you need to put some air inside your inner tube. And what I've done is I have a collection of tubes here that have various inflections in order to show you how things could possibly go wrong. Before we do that, let's check the inside of your tire. to see if anything went through the tire and punctured your inner tube. Now, if something did go through the tire, it's harder than the tire, which means it's going to be harder than your flesh. And when you go to rub your fingers inside this tire to check for that object that punctured it, you want to go very slowly because you don't want to get cut by a piece of glass or a piece of metal that's sticking through the tire. So what I like to do is hold the tire, rest it kind of on my fingertips, and I slide my fingertips around like this, just to see if you feel anything. Just very slowly the first time. Most tires have some kind of a branding mark on it, like this. So if you start there, then when you go around, when that comes around to the top again, you know you made one pass. So if you don't feel anything after one pass, then the second time through, you could push a little bit harder, you know, just making sure that you can feel for something. As you're going around, you want to visually look at the tire. You want to look for cuts. You want to look to see if you could see something sticking up from the tire. And you just you're going to just go around. Now, you may find that there's cuts in your tire from a previous altercation with something. May not have caused this flat tire, but you still want to stop and do a quick inspection. Like this one here, like I see there's like a little blip right there. So I don't feel anything, well actually I do feel a little bit rubbing from the inside. So when you give this a squeeze, you can actually see that there's a little piece of glass inside that tire right there. So when you give it a squeeze like that, this particular one, the piece of glass popped up a little bit, so I can just reach right in, and there it is. You can see it right there in the palm of my hand. Now that's brown glass. I'd have to say that's probably Budweiser. Don't push it through and pull it from the inside. You want to try to push it from the inside out, or if you squeeze the tire, you might be able to just open up the slit enough that you can get whatever it is out. So you slide around, just looking for other stuff. All right, here's another cut right here in the tire. Now, I'm squeezing it. I don't see anything in there. From the inside, I can feel that there is a slight little mark inside the tire, but nothing has come all the way through. What I like to do is when you see a cut like that, I like to get my finger, put it under the cut, and kind of push out like that, and open the cut up a little bit. If you could see your finger through the cut, then you have to put some kind of a patch on the inside of this tire. And you could use a regular patch like you would use to patch your inner tube. Just put a little bit of glue, stick it in there. If you don't have a patch and you're on the road, you can get like a dollar bill, fold it up until it's, you know, maybe roughly that big. Stick that inside your tire and then put your tube to hold it in place, and that'll prevent the tube from pushing through at that spot. Now this one was easy because there was a piece of glass in there. Okay, this inner tube, you can see right there, there's a little hole on the inside. That's either from overinflation or your rim liner was not adequately protecting the inside of your rim. Now, a rim liner comes in two different configurations depending on whether you have a single walled rim, which looks like this on the inside, when the rim liner is removed. Now, a single walled rim is called that because there's only one thickness of metal from here to here. So if you got a saw and cut this, it wouldn't be hollow in there, it would just be like one thickness of metal. And then the spoke nipple, which is the end of the spoke that you see here, these heads, stick up from the rim. Because they stick up, they need to be covered so that they don't puncture your inner tube. So if you have a single walled rim like this, you can use just a regular, it's like a big rubber band rim liner, and you stretch it over the wheel. Now there is a hole here for the valve, so you line that up with the valve hole in the rim, and then you're just going to stretch it around. You can see how it covered up all those spoke heads. If there's a hole in this liner that coincides with one of these spoke nipples, then that will puncture your inner tube from the inside. The second type double-walled rim, you can't use a rubber rim strip like that because basically this rim is hollow in here. So this piece of metal that you see up here is not this part of the rim. There's an airspace between the two. And when you look into the rim, you can see that it's actually hollow in there. What happens is when you put air inside your tube, it's going to push that rubber liner into all these little holes. Your inner tube is going to follow and it's going to stretch into that shape. As the tube stretches, it could puncture, but it's going to lose air more quickly. So with this type of a rim, you have to make sure that you have a cotton rim tape. There are various types. I like to use this one made by Velox. It's made from cotton, but it's real thick. It's a very tough material. And when you put this inside the rim, the air cannot push it into those holes. Now, when I put this on, I like to start, here's the valve hole, so I like to start it over. I wrap this tape all the way around the wheel, and instead of stopping here, I like to overlap it by about 3 or 4 inches. Cut the rim liner off, and then I'll get like a Phillips screwdriver and push it through here and put a hole that coincides with where the valve goes through. I like to use a Phillips because I don't like to remove more material from the liner than I have to. The tighter fitting that is, the less chance you have of a puncture from the inside there, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. There are others that are made out of a really rigid plastic like this that has no stretch to it. I don't know if these are fiberglass or what they are, and these work reasonably well for like the first year that you have them. But eventually what will happen is this liner does get pushed into those holes, and it leaves these characteristic like little thimble marks, and you can see them all the way around on the liner. You can see them there, and you can see them there. Because this material has no stretch to it, when it gets pushed into these hollow sections, it develops a crack. And you can see what the cracks look like. These 3 valve holes or spoke holes have the cracks in them. When you get those, what will happen is when you put air in your inner tube, it's going to push that in. That crack opens up, the inner tube pushes through it, and you get a puncture on the inside. So if you have examined everything and you still get flats from the inside, it's usually a rim liner failure. Some inner tubes puncture, well, let's see what this one. Okay, this one, you can see right there, there's 2 small cuts, one right above the other. That's what's called a pinch flat. And a pinch flat results from, if you could imagine this tire being on the wheel, and when you're riding, you hit like a curb or a pothole or some obstruction on the road. And as you hit it, your tire caves in all the way because there's not enough air pressure inside the tire to prevent that from pushing down. When it pushes down hard enough, what happens is you get these 2 snake cuts. That could be avoided by either not hitting things or maintaining proper air pressure. Sometimes when you hit something hard enough to do this pinch flat and get these snake bites, what will happen is you'll also damage your rim. And you can see here how this rim is bent out because when this tire caved in all the way, it hit hard enough that it caused that little deflection. If you have this little deflection, you either have to get a new rim or you have to try to hammer this dent out.